Hey, it's Tom Jordan. Happy New Year. It's 2025. Hard to believe. And boy, what a way to start off the year. We're going to go dive into what appears to be two separate terrorist attacks. At least one's a terrorist attack, the other one being investigated as such. Over New Year's Day. We'll start with the one in New Orleans, of course. New Orleans began 2025 in shock and mourning as this horrific and horrifying act of terror unfolded on its iconic Bourbon Street. Remember, the FBI said this is not an act of terror. Well, by all indications, evidently it is. Apparently perpetrated by that guy you just saw right there. Happened in the early hours of New Year's Day. His name is Shamsud Din Jabbar, a 42-year-old Army veteran from Texas, apparently born in Beaumont and then moved to the Houston area, where he most recently resided before he died yesterday on New Year's Day. It's an apparent Islamic extremist is who he is. He is an ISIS supporter, evidently, and he drove his pickup truck, a Ford, into a crowd of New Year's Now Day revelers, and at least now 15 people have been killed. Dozens more have been injured in that attack. And authorities have confirmed that Jabbar was inspired by ISIS and are investigating his possible ties to a broader network. So there could be a lot more individuals out there that were working with him. And they found a bunch of bombs, pipe bombs, and IEDs, improvised explosive devices, in the New Orleans area and had to detonate many of them after his demise, after he killed a bunch of people. So there's that going on. We're going to get into that in a minute. Also, there's another attack in Las Vegas, same day, New Year's Day. This Tesla Cybertruck exploded. You can see it there, just outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Killed one, the person inside the car, who they are not yet naming, and then injuring seven. Thankfully, those seven seem to be minor injuries. And I'll say, listen, good thing you rented that Cybertruck, because that appeared to really, we'll get into this as well, but limit the scope of the blast. It may have saved lives, and I mean, even the glass wasn't harmed, which is a few feet away, into the Trump International Hotel there in Las Vegas. The glass is intact. And when I first got alerted to this yesterday, it was from a liberal newspaper, and they were basically framing it as somehow this was the fault of Tesla. Like they had a bad truck, and of course it catches fire and explodes. What do you know? We hate Elon Musk, and this is what he's put out there. That was kind of the sense of the initial reporting of this in the articles. Well, that wasn't at all the case. In fact, the opposite was true. Thanks to the robust design of that truck, it likely saved lives and, of course, prevented a lot more damage. But again, one was killed. Seven people were injured, but again, minor. And so the authorities revealed that inside the truck's bed, it was loaded with gasoline containers, had camp fuel, large firework mortars in the back there, and the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is leading that investigation now, but is yet to establish a connection to the New Orleans attack. We don't know if there is a connection there, but we'll say this, that both vehicles were rented from the same car rental service, kind of like an Airbnb type of style of renting, personally owned vehicles, privately owned vehicles that they put on this network and they rent them out. So both of those vehicles were rented that way from out of state. This one in Colorado, the other one rented in Texas before being driven over the borders into their various respective locations. So we're going to look more into that in just a bit, and we'll have the latest on that. I want to remind you just to chime in. We want to take your comments today. I want to get your perspective on this and the other topics we're going to talk about. You can go into the comments section on YouTube or X or on Facebook, wherever you're watching right now live. Of course, a reminder that the podcast, Tom Jordan Live, also lives in Apple Podcast, on Spotify as well. But I'd like to interact with you on this topic today. What do you feel is going on? What does 2025 hold for us, knowing that there are millions of people in this country now, many of them who likely want to do the United States harm, and this being just two examples in one day as we begin 2025. And I do want to ask you this. Do you feel like our society has been, being pulled apart over the past several years? Our society, our values, fundamentally. Do you feel our society values children, that children are somehow less of a priority than they were in generations past. I mean, do you have kids? You got to understand, and I think most people do in their heart, but that children are the heart of a just, enduring, and meaningful society. And having kids forges these bonds of love and duty that ripple through families and communities and the entire nation. I mean, the closest local, I mean, the form of our government in the United States is based on the foundational values of the family. That's how it was formed. And you got the family structure. And then from there, you have your community, your neighborhoods. And then you have the, states, and then eventually the federal government. I mean, the structure is, based on the families. So these relationships that are forged, they underpin things like justice and the rule of law. Well, vulnerability of children, it calls on society, members of society, to guide children toward responsibilities and liberty, but not using liberty to hurt other individuals. Everybody has rights of liberty and civil liberties, and tempering excesses and fostering moral citizenship. And we've seen the families being broken apart in this country over the past several decades. And now it's just so, careers are more important than kids, and we're seeing this message being perpetuated throughout our society and throughout the media. Hillsdale College, this gentleman we were going to have on today, his name is Mehan. We've had him on before. Great guy, great intellectual and thinker. And he's an associate dean and assistant professor at Hillsdale College, the Steve and Amy Van Andel Graduate School of Government in Washington, D.C. And he wrote this great piece regarding this and the devaluing of children in our society nowadays and what that has led to in terms of the consequences of that. And listen, he writes about the founding fathers and why they had such a huge priority on children and recognizing the profound role that children play in shaping a just and virtuous society. George Washington, you look at him, and John Adams, they were openly at the time expressing their deep bonds with their own family, their own kids, and duty that was inspired by their children. What a motivation to do good in your communities because it benefits your own kids and then your grandkids. That's this historical perspective of children and why the societies are based on family and the family structure. And do we understand that still? Do we understand children's purpose and how it contrasts now with the modern ideologies, modern tendencies to view, children primarily as economic factors, like we need to have more children so we can have a better business and more workers in our society, when in fact, really, society should be based on the values that are instilled within us based on children. And the contrast is stark, is what Dr. Mehan writes. You should check it out. Hillsdale College, he writes about this. While the founders of this country, they saw children, they viewed children as integral to the moral and civic fabric of the nation. Modern society often reduces children to future economic contributors. I mean, that's the best, I think, of modern tendencies now. And their views of children and family is, how we're going to keep our economic stability going on into the future. And it neglects the deeper purpose. Mehan believes, and as I do too, that's why I wanted to talk about this morning, the purpose of children as the relational and the ethical guide of communities, which ultimately secures liberty and justice for all. So if you care about your children, you care about crime rate, you care about human nature. And, you see these terrorist attacks that were taking place in our society on a more frequent basis. And somehow the FBI's reluctance to prioritize the real threats to this country. And in fact, so much so that yesterday they came out and said this was not a terrorist attack. Why do they? And why in recent years have they really downplayed when these obvious terror attacks have occurred and try to assign them as to some other cause? We saw Barack Obama do that with the Fort Hood shooter. Barack Obama and his administration tried to categorize it as a workplace, disgruntled, employee employer kind of relationship thing. When in fact it was a Islamic terrorist attack that they wanted to downplay because that seemed a little unsympathetic to their cause. Where their cause is, it doesn't matter what, in my view, and I've had several conversations now after 9/11 from people in mainstream media and these, more leftist and liberal politicians and liberal thinkers as to, hey, listen, we need to understand why they committed the attacks of 9/11. We need to understand why they went into San Bernardino and shot up a bunch of people because we need to understand and sympathize with their plight. And that's been the mindset, even I think, seeping into the FBI and the Department of Justice, this DEI priorities over the safety of everyday citizens of this country, regardless of the color of your skin or your cultural background. I mean, the people that died in New Orleans, the 15 at the least, we don't know what their partisan background was or their ethnicities at all. They were human beings. And based on apparently being soft on these ideologies that have been allowed to permeate our society, we've made our society more dangerous for whatever this reasoning is. Because the people that have this particular ideology have a certain color of skin, so therefore we need to acquiesce, we need to listen to them. No, we need to stop them from the get-go because it's dangerous, regardless of their skin color. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. And so, there's been a real push towards, the FBI made a real crackdown on, remember, Catholics. We got to, or this whole narrative that somehow the greatest threat to the United States of America are Christian nationalists and white supremacists. I'm thinking, no, it's obvious what the white supremacy is bad, of course, but right now in this point in history, in this country, are white supremacists the biggest threat to this country? No. Clearly, we have Islamic extremists who have proven time and again their ideology is a threat because they want to tear down this country. We see this protest even in 2024 all over the country where they were holding ISIS flags on American college campuses, saying the foundations of the United States needs to be wiped out and destroyed. And we have Kamala Harris coming out saying, yeah, well, I sympathize with their cause. Really? Well, see, that's the real threat then. If we're sympathizing with extremists, then the sympathizers are also extremists as well. So anyway, that's a big issue. I think we've stepped away from the children of all backgrounds and ethnicities. The kids in our society, they are the bedrock of a free society. And without the relationships and virtues cultivated through family life, justice becomes very abstract, very relative, very hollow. And we look at now declining birth rates in this country. It threatens the American experiment. A nation that fails to replenish its population risks more than just economic stagnation. It risks losing the cultural and moral continuity that binds generations together. The family is the first school of citizenship. This is where we learn how to behave, how to treat other people, and the guidance and protection that parents offer children teach them discipline, responsibility, and respect for others. That is not a concept that was created by white people in this country, which is what has been part of the media narrative. I'm sorry to say, but that has been it. A strong work ethic, we have heard said, is a white construct. No, it's not. It works all over the world, in Asia and Africa and in Europe and wherever you want to go, South America. Those principles are good for the family and good for a society. And I've said this before, but in this country, in the United States of America, the most successful demographic in terms of education and career and earnings, the most successful, and this is not heard a lot in there, it's at African Americans. Did you know that? Well, so that's not true, Tom. We have the data in front of us. No, well, let's go to the country of Nigeria. Nigeria is in Africa. Nigerians in this country, in the United States, are African Americans. That is the one demographic that leads the way out of all people. White people lead over Asians in the whole group of American citizens. Nigerians are the most successful group of individuals in this country. Why is that? Because they have family discipline and high expectations from mom and dad of their children. And they walk them through that. They teach them respect for others and values that are crucial for a functioning democracy. So when you hear from people that the United States is inherently racist and nobody who has black skin has any chance in the society, they're completely wrong. It's completely dependent upon your cultural backgrounds and behaviors. What you value as a family in large part will dictate your future as a child and the future of your community. That's the facts. So when families are strong, society thrives. When families falter, the entire structure of civic life begins to crumble. And we're seeing that happen in the United States. It's happened in Europe because they've devalued family life. And the founders of the United States, they understood the moral power of children. Figures like George Washington, John Adams, they saw their love for children as a source of personal consolation and public purpose. They wanted to make the world a better place for their children. And they knew that these relationships inspired the courage and the selflessness that's necessary to defend and uphold a just republic. So that's kind of the background. I think fundamentally this is what's happening in our society, and we're paying very little attention to it. In our government, we're trying to find all these other ways to, reduce the crime rate in this country, or the attacks from, criminal gangs, and guns are often blamed for this from law-abiding citizens, when in fact, you can break it down to the family structure and what moms and dads are prioritizing in their lives every week, every day that passes, every week that passes. Your influence is the greatest influence on your children. It doesn't mean your children are going to be perfect. That's not what we're saying here. But we can drastically reduce the crime rate, probably 70, 80, 90% in this country, if we had dinner together on 5 nights a week with your family, moms and dads with their kids. Prioritizing that would do wonders for our society. So let's take it back now to this attack. Let's start off with New Orleans, the New Orleans attack. It began this year, 2025, in shock. Morning. It's this horrific attack, and you can see some of the aftermath there on Bourbon Street as the police are there trying to figure out what happened, why this occurred, and who else is out there. Remember, the Sugar Bowl was supposed to be yesterday. It's going to be today now. They postponed the Sugar Bowl. The Super Bowl is coming up in New Orleans in February. There's a lot of what seems to be missteps in terms of security over New Year's Eve, maybe in preparation for the other events that are forthcoming in that city. But listen, it was this guy named Shamsud Din Jabbar, again, 42 years old. And there's this crazy stuff. I mean, Joe Biden came out and emphasized this is an American citizen. It has nothing to do with any type of immigration or whatnot. He's fighting an argument that right now doesn't exist in terms of this. What does exist is the dangerous ideology that this man there had and has permeated our society in large part thanks to, I would say, the Biden administration, the Obama administration. He's very sympathetic to what appears to be Islamic extremism. Why are we as a nation so supportive whenever Democrats get in office of the country of Iran? Why are we funding with the tens of billions of dollars their ability to commit terrorist attacks with their proxies of Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis? And apparently they have, Iranian citizens who hate this country in our country now because the doors have been wide open at our borders. And this ideology, we got them coming up from all over the world: Kazakhstan, Pakistan, you name it, Afghanistan, Iran, China. They're coming over in droves now, and they hate this country. Why has that been allowed to happen? And don't give me the whole because we want to be compassionate thing. You want to be compassionate to people who want to destroy your country? Well, to me, that says you want to destroy the country as well. So anyway, that was his ideology. It had nothing to do, in this case, with illegal immigration. It It had to do with the fact, and who knows who's helping him? Maybe there was an onslaught of terrorists who have been allowed to come into this country illegally that were part of this network, which they now say does exist, and are trying to find these individuals. So, okay, he's an Army veteran from Texas, but he drove a pickup truck into a crowd of revelers, killing at least 15 people, injuring dozens more, and he was inspired by ISIS. And now they're investigating, they're openly admitting his possible ties to a broader network. The FBI was refuting this yesterday, and now they admitted that was the case. Attorney General Liz Muriel, this is the Attorney General of Louisiana. She's urged federal law enforcement to treat this case as a top priority. She said she's frustrated over the lack of transparency from the FBI, and she said this is an open investigation into a terrorist event, and our first duty is to ensure every accomplice is apprehended. And that's her message to the FBI. Don't put this on the back burner like you've done other terrorist attacks. Remember the Christmas parade tragedy that the media started to bury because it turns out that the person who perpetrated that crime and killed all those people happened to be a favorable demographic in the eyes of the media. So they downplayed that a terrorist attack. They killed all these innocent people in a parade during Christmas time were killed by this guy. So this tragedy in New Orleans comes amid this increasing concerns about the radicalization of U.S. citizens and the gaps in counterterrorism strategies. Former President Donald Trump, he criticized what he called the erosion of safety and security under current leadership. And he's demanding urgent action. He'll get there, 18 days from now? Is that what it is now? 18 days until he gets into the White House. So let's go back a little bit. Let's hear from the FBI, and then we'll hear from Louisiana Senator John Kennedy about what happened in New Orleans.
He exited the vehicle and fired upon local law enforcement. Law enforcement returned fire, and the subject was pronounced deceased at the scene. 2 law enforcement officers were injured and transported to local hospitals. The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Samsoud Dim Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject came in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe. The FBI Special Agent bomb technicians, as well as our local law enforcement partners, have been working to determine if any of these devices are viable, and they'll work to render those devices safe. The FBI, we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. We're aggressively running down all of the leads to identify the possible subject's associates. We're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Samsoud Dim Jabbar in the last 72 hours that you contact us. The FBI is asking the public's help. We're asking anyone who has information, video, or pictures to provide it to the FBI.
For those people who don't believe in objective evil, all you have to do is look at what happened in our city early this morning. I am, if this doesn't trigger the gag reflex of every American, every fair-minded American, I'll be very surprised. I'm here because these are my people. I'm here because these are my people's friends. I'm here because there are a lot of Louisianians that are scared tonight. I don't want them to be. There's a lot of information going around. Some of it is actually true. Some of it isn't. The federal government is now in charge of this investigation. By that I mean the White House, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. I have not talked to the FBI. Maybe they've talked to my staff. I don't know. I did talk to the Secretary of Homeland Security a little while ago. And I told him that with all the respect I could muster, that we expect to put the full force and resources of the federal government behind this investigation. Our state troopers, our local police departments, our sheriffs, we've got many sheriffs here today, have been terrific so far. The federal government is cooperating with them. I hope that will continue. Here's what I want to ask from the federal government. Catch these people. Catch these people. And then tell the American people the truth. Now, I don't want you to tell us yet anything that's going to interfere with your investigation. And there are things that I've been told that I think are true that I'm not sharing with you today because it could interfere with their investigation. But after we get to the bottom of this, they need to tell the American people the truth, and the people of New Orleans the truth, and the people of America the truth. I think the mayor and the governor are very wise to postpone this ball game for 24 hours. There's just too much stuff we don't know, and it's just not worth it. But I guess my final point is, I will promise you this: I will, when it is appropriate and this investigation is complete, you will find out what happened and who was responsible.
Good. Yeah, we need the American people are hungry for the truth. And we got this other attack in Las Vegas, but we don't need to bury the truth in the name of cultural sensitivities. People need to know what happened, what the real dangers are in our country. Meantime, there is this Tesla Cybertruck that exploded outside of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. That happened about 8:40 yesterday morning. That would be Las Vegas time. And the New Orleans attack was about 3 o'clock in the morning, New Orleans time. So just a few hours apart when these two attacks occurred. One person was killed in this attack. 7 others were injured. And authorities have revealed that the vehicle's bed was loaded with gasoline containers, camp fuel. There were large firework mortars. The truck was rented in Colorado, was tracked through Tesla charging stations before detonating within seconds of pulling into the hotel valet area. To give us background on what had occurred here, here's the sheriff of that area, Kevin McMahill.
2024 Tesla Cybertruck pulled into the area valet of the Trump International Hotel. Very quickly thereafter that, the driver, who was the sole occupant of the truck, we saw what looked like maybe some sort of smoke, and then the truck exploded. Smoke was coming from inside of the truck after we noticed the flash and the explosion, and I'm going to show you that first video. That's the Cybertruck parked right in front of the doors. Can you play that again, Carlos? So the individual that was in that truck is obviously deceased, still in the truck as we speak here today. Our fire department folks, Engine 12, a number of others, you'll hear from one of the fire chiefs here in just a moment, arrived very quickly along with my officers. And obviously we knew that we had a much larger event than just a vehicle fire. And so there's going to be a drone video that plays to my left again. You'll see as the fire initially, they covered it with the tarp to try to get it to go out. Once the fire went out through the suppression efforts of the fire department, you'll see some of the evidence in the back of the vehicle. So those are gasoline canisters. They are camp fuel canisters and large firework mortars. What I also would like you to pay attention to on that video, as you see that, It looks like the exterior of that truck is completely intact as it sits there. The fact that this was a Cybertruck really limited the damage that occurred inside of the valet because it had most of the blast go up through the truck and out. In fact, if you look on that video, you'll see that the front glass doors at the Trump hotel were not even broken by that blast, which they were parked directly in front of. You can see that in the video there. I am not going to confirm any names to you as I sit here today because I cannot do that with 100% certainty of who the individual is. What I can tell you is we do know the truck was rented in Colorado. We were able to trace that truck through the Tesla charging stations, and it arrived here in Las Vegas this morning at about 7:30 and went up and down Las Vegas Boulevard before immediately pulling into the Trump Towers. Unfortunately, there were 7 people that reported injuries during this incident. All of them still remain as minor injuries and were treated at UMC.
Yeah, minor injuries, thankfully, because, you heard the Las Vegas sheriff there, Kevin McMahill, crediting the Cybertruck's robust design with limiting the blast damage. He noted that even the hotel's glass doors remained intact. The glass doors just feet away, they were not broken, and it's amazing. Thankfully, he rented that particular vehicle. I think what, my theory, and it's an original thought here, is what some people think, that he was targeting the reputation of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. But because he targeted Elon Musk potentially, he picked out one of his vehicles that happened to be so strong and robust that it limited the damage that maybe he intended. Of course, he was the only one killed. The individual. We're assuming it's a he. We don't know for sure yet. He hasn't released the identity, but the person apparently decided to stay in the vehicle. Looks like it was a suicide terrorist attack, in my view. Of course, they have not said that, the experts who are investigating right now. Anyway, so the explosion raises a whole lot of questions, right, about potential links to terrorism, following that deadly incident on Bourbon Street in New Orleans earlier in the same day. And the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, they're leading the investigation. They have yet to confirm the identity, as you heard, of the renter of the Cybertruck or establish even a connection to the New Orleans attack. But there is this rental agency called Turo, T-U-R-O. Turo is the peer-to-peer rental service for cars. And they came out with a statement saying, neither suspect had a criminal background that was detectable through the standard checks that they use. So we do know the first one, the one in New Orleans, had a criminal background, but these were somewhat minor offenses back, I forget the time frame, about 2002, 2003 time frame. For Elon Musk, as it relates to him, the CEO of Tesla, who happens to also own X, he posted on X, and he emphasized, the vehicle's safety features, which contained much of the blast. Because initially, again, the media comes out reporting this, saying, the inference was that these Teslas are dangerous because they caught fire and exploded in Las Vegas in a public area. And it was just irresponsible journalism, once again, that, of course, hopefully they're coming back and pulling back and say, hey, we made a wrong assumption here. We should not have presumed this was a fire started by Tesla and an explosion that was started by the fire from Tesla. In fact, it was an apparent terrorist attack instead. All right, we do have some comments. I want to get to those. I want to thank you for partaking in our conversation here. Let's go one by one. And we're going to start with Arlene Pearson. Hi, Arlene. Good to see you. Our society has become more devices blatantly, from my observations, since the Obama presidency. Group identity politics, multiculturalism, CRT, DEI that have become more popular, more prevalent due to academia, Hollywood, legacy media, some churches, corrupted government and courts. Such ideology is destructive to our Western civilization and our U.S. constitutional ideals. You said everything that I agree with right there, Arlene. That is absolutely the case. It did start with President Barack Obama. He said, he's the unifier. He did the exact opposite. And they do this in the name of unity when, in fact, they are purposefully dividing individuals based on the labels they subscribe to groups of individuals. Barack Obama was an expert in this. He was what they called a community organizer, and that was his game. He would win political arguments by organizing communities in different factions to put them against each other. It's like building different straw men so you can eventually tear them all down, except for your one group that you want to favor. And that's what Barack Obama did prior to becoming the president of the United States, and he used the same tactics as president. He is the reason, in my view, but I was a reporter during that time, that the police departments in this country became so hated. Police officers were attacked more and more at a growing, escalating scale because of Barack Obama's successful attempts to demonize police officers in this country, that they are actually going out and attempting purposely to kill black people. That was his message. And it was very subtle sometimes. Sometimes it was very overt. But every time there was a black person who was killed by a police officer, many times I should say, Barack Obama as president would come out and denounce the cops without having all the evidence. And you come to find out that almost all of these individuals were armed and were threatening the cops first. Not all of them. There was one where I saw a guy, a black individual, killed from behind by a white police officer. But it's incredibly rare. And as a reporter, you try to bring out the real statistics, and people, the thrust in that time in our history was to attack any individual that would dare refute the false narrative that was coming out and started by Barack Obama. And the media loved him so much, they picked up on this and they ran with it for many, many years. And now the attacks against police and the killings of police are so much more common now than they ever have been. And by the way, white people are shot by cops too. More white people than black people are shot by cops, but that doesn't get covered in the same way at all. So it's only racist if it happens to an African American. But that was the message. Now I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. It does. And I hate racism. But to say everything is racist is damaging, and it's a purposeful attempt to divide this country. And you mentioned, Arlene, academia. Absolutely. These ideologies are stemming from the academic world, and they have because so many of our young people have been taught these things since the 1960s and 1970s as truth, as a fundamental premise in which to build our societies and communities upon. We are going south. Families don't matter nearly as much anymore to these progressives when it comes to the power of government and the power that should be instilled on unelected bureaucrats in the name of efficiencies and in the name of cultural sensitivities. If you were attacked by a minority, well, you may have had it coming. I mean, that's essentially the message. I have heard it blatantly, so don't tell me that doesn't happen. It does. I've heard it ad nauseum. And just the comments on social media yesterday regarding this New Orleans attack from the leftists who are almost celebrating the fact that this guy was an American citizen. He was a radical Islamic extremist. And they have a hard time saying those words because of cultural sensitivities. But in the same time, they have no issues with demonizing Christians and calling them the biggest threat to this country. Christian nationalists. It's absurd, and people are frankly fed up with it. They're tired of the lies, and that's why we had John Kennedy come out and say, listen, people want to know the truth. They are going to hear the truth, and I am demanding that this federal government, this FBI, this DOJ, this White House stops hiding the truth from the American people, and they just level with people who already know they're being gaslit by Joe Biden and his administration about the real threats in this country. They're exaggerating the false threats, and they're minimizing the real threats. And what does that do? That puts us at a greater risk of these threats that are coming across the border by the millions. Arlene, thank you so much. That was a great comment. Appreciate it. Let's bring up another one here. It's Art Paulus. IBO, Nigerians are Christians. IBO. I don't know what maybe one of my 20-somethings who work with me could tell. What is IBO? Anybody know? Ah, people from a region in Nigeria. I think that's what Cameron Harris, our 20-something who works here, told me. IBO. Okay, Nigerians are Christians. Yes, people in that particular area of Nigeria. So the reason why our Paulus is saying this is because I said earlier in this broadcast, I made this audacious claim that the most successful individuals in this country are African Americans. They are. And they happen to be from the country of Nigeria. So if you're a Nigerian, you are an African American, and you are the most successful as a group in terms of academic accomplishment and income and status. What the world would call success, that would go to Nigerians. And the reason for that is we're basing this on the family structure and the importance of family dynamics as the real organization. The family is the one that teaches us about morality, discipline, achievement, about what is best in fighting off your own personal demons, or what we Christians would call the sins of the flesh, ignoring those things or fighting against them for what's better, this transcendent purpose for your life. That is a Christian principle, a biblical concept that makes our society better. So if you're fending off your own, what you might call natural but sinful desires, stopping those as you can, and then focusing on the harder things in life that are better for not just you, not just for your family, but for communities. That's Christianity. Those are the benefits of Christianity. And so that concept comes from the Bible. The more we put away that, in my opinion, and I think I have many decades of studying this to make this opinion, I think it's true, that the more we've strayed from the Bible, the more crime has risen, the more anxiety has risen, the more depression has risen, the more these attacks on, you can call them school shootings or terrorist attacks, have risen. And people are trying to make this horrific claim that a lot of these attacks are coming from Christians. They are not. Columbine, the big inspiration for a lot of school shootings, those were against Christians. If you said you were a believer in Jesus Christ, they shot you point blank and killed you. These are not Christian acts. These are attacks, many of them are against Christians. You've seen these Christian schools being shot up by people who are hateful towards Christians. So that's what's happening here. So I think in Nigeria, they have a very prominent family structure. Moms and dads in Nigeria, for the most part, not everybody, because there's problems in Nigeria as well. There are terrorist activities happening there as well. There's fringe groups that have taken power over that country. But the family structure there, and when they leave Nigeria because of the violence, they come to the United States, they bring their cultural priorities with them, and they happen to align with American values, and that is hard work. That's high expectations of doing good based on Christianity. And what ends up happening? They become the most successful demographic in the United States of America. More so than white people, more so than Asians. If you want to break it down by labels and groups, look at the Nigerians in the United States of America and break it down that way. I happen to believe that every single individual in this country, it was created in the same way, by the same God who loves each one of us the same way and gives us all the abilities to accomplish great things, regardless of your skin color. So, yes, thanks for that. R. Paul, it's good to hear from you. We got another comment here? That is all, according to Cameron. Wait. He said there's another one. Let's bring this up. Hiding from us. As Cameron Harris is working on it, I'm going to guess. Guy named William. Is it William? No. Harry Sakillian is back. Okay, let's bring it up. Harry Sakillian. Hi, Tom. Hi, Harry. Following left-wing media logic, had the New Orleans massacre involved a weapon, the headlines would read, 15 killed by such and such, a weapon, and not the shooter. And following this flawed logic, we would expect to see today's headlines to read 15 murdered by an EV. The left-leaning continues to shape the narrative to their purposes. Regards, Harry Sakillian. Harry, thank you so much. I've often thought about that because there is a growing tactic to run people down, to mow people down with a vehicle, a truck. In this case, it was a Ford. I think it was an F-150, was it? I think it was. Might have been a 250. But by the way, the Al-Qaeda magazine, I think it was called Insight. They had outlined how to do this exact type of terrorist attack, to go out and rent a Ford F-150 or a Ford F-250 because there's a lot of weight behind it, pack it with explosives, and run down a bunch of people. So that's the Al-Qaeda playbook. This guy was an ISIS sympathizer, a terrorist, who would probably agree with this tactic because we saw it in Germany, a few weeks ago. We've seen it here in this country now on a few occasions now, just mowing people down, where there's a large crowd of people walking in a closed down street and running them over and killing them. It's horrendous what's happening. We've seen it in France, in the UK. It's pretty awful, but it's a playbook that they're using more and more. So, Harry, back to your logic here. You would think that the media would say, we need to ban cars or we need to ban electric vehicles, as you said, because they can explode so easily in front of the Trump Tower. I mean, that's their logic. It's not logical to say that because it was a terrorist attack and it was a person, an individual with a dangerous ideology that did this. So my personal, strong opinion and belief, like I believe this is true, is that we need to change our ideology in this country. We need to go back, yes, I'll say it, to Christianity, to Christ Jesus. Because what does he teach? He teaches, strong discipline, denying yourself in the sense of for the betterment of somebody else. He is gracious, of course, to us and gives us the strength to do those things that are maybe not temporarily beneficial to us. In the long term, they will be, but they might immediately have an impact for the positive on someone else around you. And there's a great hope that comes with that. And if you have great hope, this country is missing out on hope. We no longer have it like we used to. And I know Christ provides hope, not just for now, but for all eternity. So if you pick up this understanding of it, and then you have, this relationship with God like that, the God of the Bible, not the God who wants to destroy anyone who's not like them. And this is what these Islamic extremists believe. They call them all infidels, and they must all be destroyed. This isn't new. We've known this for centuries about this ideology. We're just covering it up more nowadays. And some people say, well, that's hateful for you to say. No, it's loving. It's loving for me to say, I don't want any more people to die. And even if you call yourself a Christian and you have these sympathies, then that's wrong. As a Christian, I will tell you as a Christian that you're wrong and it's dangerous what you're believing. Arlene brought up some of the teachings that are coming out of the church. And I agree with her on this too. There are churches now that have subscribed to, I believe, a dangerous ideology that allows these kind of acts without. I don't think their intentions are bad, but they're I guess they're just ignorant of what their actions will lead to, and what their words will lead to. We need to not condone bad behavior. We can welcome people who are struggling with bad behavior, what they would call sin, help them out of it, but don't condone it. And that's the loving thing to do, to help the individual and then, of course, help society as well. So anyway, I want to thank you all for great comments today. Appreciate it so much. Just a reminder, you can always share this podcast. We'd invite you to do so on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Please share with your friends. And we like to spread the word as we go into 2025 to proliferate this land with Tom Jordan Live. And we have a lot of guests we are planning to have that we're excited about for 2025, beginning again with tomorrow on a Friday. And then we'll take the weekend off and have a big week next week as well. TomJordanLive.com. And if you'd like to help support us financially, you can on Patreon as well. Patreon, Tom Jordan Live. Okay, until our next program, thanks for listening and watching. God bless you. We'll see you back here tomorrow, streaming live Eastern, 9 a.m.